Welcome back to the shed, everyone. We're going to conclude our eighth note exercises with some eighth notes around the grid and some comping combinations. So our half note is still 60 BPM. We're still doing the ride cymbal pattern and the left foot being the hi-hat. These are just some simple comping patterns that are super useful when you start playing some jazz drumming in scenarios. The first one we're going to do is on the and of 1, the and of 2, and beat 4. 1, 2, you'll sing it through and then play it. A 1 and a 4. 1 and a 4. 1 and 4. 1 and a 4. 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 Good. And a 4. And a 4. And a 4. And a 4. Awesome. Take that slow if you want to. Go back. You could turn your metronome down, and eventually you could start singing along to it as well. Next example we're going to do is going to be the and of 2, the and of 3, and beat 4. 1, 2, I'll sing it first. 1, 2, and 4. And 4. And 4. And 4. And 4. And 4. Good. And 4. And 4. And 4. Make sure you're thinking about your left hand more than anything else. Your right hand and your left foot should not be thought about a lot. 1, 2, and 4. 1, 2, and 4. Make sure everything feels good. 1, 2, and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Good. For our next example, we're going to add in some simple triplets. We're going to do the first 2 triplets of beat 1 and the first 2 triplets of beat 2, and then we're going to hit beat 4. This one might be a bit tricky because it's the first time adding in triplets, but if you take your time with it, maybe slow your metronome down, you should be fine. So again, the first 2 triplets of beat 1, the first 2 triplets of beat 2, and the beat 4. 2, I'll sing it first, ready, go. A 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4. 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 Ba 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 ba. A 4. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4. Good. 4. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 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 4. For these triplet ones, if you want to say doodle-ah throughout the whole thing, that's totally fine too. Here's doodle-ah with that same pattern. Ready, go. A doodle-ah, 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 do. La doodle-ah, 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 doodle-ah. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4. A 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4. Awesome. For our next pattern, we're going to do the and of 1, the and of 2, and 4, and the and of 4. I'll sing that first. A 1, a 2, a ready, go. A 1 and a 4 and a 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and here we go. 1 and a 4 and 4 and 4 and a 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 4 and good. For our next pattern, we're going to do beat 1, the and of 1, we're going to do the and of 2, and we're going to do beat 4. 1, 2, I'll sing it first. 1 and 4. 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 1 and 4 and 1 and 4. 1 and 4. 1 and sorry. 4 1 and you got it. 4 1 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Awesome. For our last combination for today, we're going to do the and of 1, beat 2, the and of 2, and beats 4 and the and of 4. I'll sing that first. A 1 and 2 and a 4 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 and 2 and 4 and 2 and a 4 and 2 and 4 and 2 and a 4 and. Again, if you have trouble with these, take these slow and then bump up the tempo. Take out a limb if you want. You can take out your hi-hat and just play your right hand. So let's do that same pattern without the hi-hat. You could do this with any of these combinations. 2, the same pattern. And 2 and, 4 and 2 and, 4 and 2 and, 4 and. Then you could add it back in. Here we go. A 1 and 2 and, 4 and 2 and, 4 and 2 and, 4 and 2 and, a 4 and. Thanks so much. That has been some eighth note comping patterns with a couple of triplets as well. Have a good one.